Now let's bring you more on the first phase of the UK government's expanded offer of funded childcare for working families in England. It came into effect this week and means working parents of 2-year-olds will now get 15 hours per week of funded childcare during term time. From September, this will change to all children from 9 months old who'll get that funding during term time. So let's talk this through with Rajan Lakhani, who's head of money at Plum, who's been looking into this. Rajan, there's a lot of concern about provision. Your thoughts?
Yeah, good morning. There is a lot of concern about provision. Childcare providers have been underfunded for some time, and the finding staff retention is a particular challenge. With your previous guest, you were talking about the rise in the minimum wage, and those staffing costs have increased for childcare providers, and so their costs have increased, yet they've not been receiving enough from the government to be able to deliver those childcare reforms until recently, when the Chancellor pledged to introduce guaranteed rates, which would be index linked, so they would get more money to be able to fulfil the provision of childcare. But because there has been that underfunding over the past few years, it's still very challenging for childcare providers to be able to deliver this. And there is less provision around. A number of childcare providers have had to reduce what they provide, but also some of them have had to close. It was recently published that there's been a reduction in 1,000 nursery places as well. So there's that big imbalance at the moment between supply and demand.
And it really just depends where you are, doesn't it? It's a bit like a postcode lottery.
It is, and in some places it's really difficult. Some parents are saying within a few months of their child being born, they're having to apply for a childcare place, and it is really challenging for parents. At Plum, we did some research around this, and not only is there the postcode lottery issue, but there's also confusion about what support is available. Over 2/3 of parents are confused about the childcare provision, and there is lots of support available, whether it's through these free childcare hours or tax-free childcare or childcare benefit. But it is confusing for parents, and depending on where you live and whether there is provision, you might not be able to get that support.
I mean, if you live in a place where you just cannot find a space in a local nursery, etc., what are your options? There aren't any, are there, or are there?
There are some options. For example, the government does provide support to family to do the childcare themselves. So there is some provision to get that support from parents, and so from grandparents and other guardians as well. There is child benefit available too. So there are benefits from the government as well. But there is also the option to pay for childcare as well. And that's the thing. These free hours are 15, and they will rise to 30, but that's only across 38 weeks of the year. So for another 14 weeks, those free childcare hours aren't necessarily available. And what childcare providers are having to do is charge higher for those hours outside of the free hours, and charge higher for extras as well, for things like food and nappies and trips as well. So it's a challenging environment for parents. And you were talking about inflation earlier, and yes, there is some good news with food prices falling, but on the other hand, council tax bills are going up, water bills are going up, broadband bills are going up, and 1.6 million households are remortgaging this year. So when you combine that with the challenging environment around childcare, it's still a difficult environment for families across the country.
It certainly is. Rajan Lakhani, thank you for your analysis on that.
Thank you.